Hello everybody, this is MonteCristo, and today we're going to be looking at an analysis of the Boston Uprising's play on Temple of Anubis against the Seoul Dynasty, with a particular focus on point A. Now, you may be wondering why we're looking at Boston when they in fact lost this map, but they did win the series. And frankly, I think Boston's tactics were really innovative and interesting and confusing for the Seoul Dynasty. And so we're going to look at some of their baits and their big brain plays to confuse Seoul and how they sort of bamboozled the Dynasty on both attack and defense. Now, in a typical Reinhardt Goat's Mirror Anubis attack, this is the kind of formation that you're going to see if the Reinhardt comp on the attack here in blue decides to go through and rotate through the left-hand side through this hallway. The red team here on defense is going to be holding this choke point and will always have an advantage as they spam through this doorway because the blue team obviously needs to move through the choke point in order to get to point A itself. So this can be a bit of a trick here for the A attacking team because they either need to sort of build up ultimates. There's a lot of poke wars that's going on, breaking down barriers, using up defensive matrix, a lot of tactics that go into getting through this doorway, but it is always going to be attacker favored. So what's so brilliant about what the Boston Uprising did was that they made a fake play. So they, instead of putting their Diva in that room and their Lucio in that room, they hid them here in this room while the rest of their team went into the typical choke point. Now, this prompted Seoul to start firing through this, not realizing that there were not 6 players in this room, and then gave Note and Kelix the opportunity to jet out this doorway onto Jaehong and get that first crucial elimination before collapsing back onto the rest of the Seoul roster. Let's now take a look at this plan in motion, just so you can see how it actually plays out here. So Boston Uprising does a very unique feint strategy, and as you can see, right here, the 4 members are actually going to move over and into the room that we just looked at, whereas Note and Kelix are just going to stay right here and in place. So as we roll through this first point attack, it's going to be interesting to see exactly how Note and Kelix collapse on Jaehong. The broadcast perspective is not the best for this, but you're going to notice that Fusions pushes through this doorway, and you'll see this mech right here in the outline rolling up and actually just attacking straight onto Jaehong, which is what gets them the first elimination and helps them win this quick fight here on point A. So as we move through, unfortunately we don't get to see the elimination, but we can see the effect of the fake and the flank. And then obviously Fissure still going to be in trouble right here. Note's going to be booped off the edge, still has his boosters, and actually picks up the kill onto Fissure as well as they're trying to retreat. And this will in turn lead to a very quick point A capture for the Boston Uprising, as well as a decent ult advantage outside of Fissure, who got a few swings in, but across the board, a little bit higher percentages here for the Boston Uprising. The second play we're going to look at is not anything too terribly special, but it's still interesting because of what it sets up on another defense. Here the Boston Uprising are playing defense on point A, and it's going to be a pretty typical Winston defense here on A. And the whole idea of having a Winston defense on Anubis A is that you want to intercept the Reinhardt Goat's composition before it can get to the point. The idea is that you really want to charge up your primal by catching many people with your leaps and with your Tesla gun damage so that you can continue to disrupt the composition, because if you just let them fight you in a choke or fight you straight up, you're not going to have the biggest advantage because Reinhardt is just more durable, providing more damage output than the Winston, so you have to use the mobility to your advantage instead. So what we're going to see here is just fusions coming in on the Winston, and this is the typical point of attack where the Winston will drop down right here and tickle everybody with the gun. You're going to try and get some damage. Maybe you get a lucky support kill right here, but mostly the idea is just to slow them down and to get some ult charge and then reposition back on the high ground. And every time they come through a choke point, you're going to be in some sort of position to disrupt them and get a few more ult percentage on your attack. As you can see right here, Fusion's already at about 50% of that ult charge. Now, this is going to come important because the way Boston plays their second defense in the time bank mode is going to be really interesting because they actually play something similar but with a Reinhardt composition instead. So here we are at the beginning of Boston Uprising's second A defense. Now remember, they went with the Winston Goats for that first A defense, and what you see right now is a typical formation for a Winston Goats defense, except for one major difference. Guess who's not playing Winston? It's going to be Fusions, who's on the Reinhardt. Now, usually you'd obviously see the Reinhardt somewhere up here at this point in time. Two circles. Somewhere up here at this point in time, ready to defend that choke, like we saw earlier in this video. However, that's not what's going to happen. And why they're doing this most likely is because there's nearly 5.5 minutes here left in time bank, and Boston was only able to take 3 points, so only point A, and didn't get any percent on point B, which means they need to have a super sick defense if they want to tie this map at the very least, which then, of course, if they tie, they'd actually win the match. Now, they don't end up winning this map, but I think the logic behind what they're doing is sound, and they're going to take a little bit of a risk here, which is going to be quite fun to watch. Now, remember that Seoul Dynasty is not going to know that there is a Reinhardt here, but what they're going to think based on this spread of heroes on this bridge is that there is going to be a Winston defense again. So they're not going to be too worried about coming here into this little doorway because they think they're just going to get a little tickling from Winston and not a full-blown Reinhardt attack as they try and go through the choke point. Also notice where Note is. Now, Note's positioning is going to be important here because if they go left, then everybody on the side of Boston can collapse into this corridor because they have the Lucio speed boost and force a fight and sandwich them effectively between the D.Va and the rest of the team. Now, if they don't do that, and instead we see them heading into this choke point, well, guess what? Note's just going to boost her out of here, and they're going to sandwich them in this room instead. So either way, it's going to be an effective strategy, potentially. Is it high risk? Sure. And in fact, Note does get demeched in this attack, which could be a problem. Ends up not being, but you'll see how this plays out. We had to look at it this way because the observing really doesn't capture the angle very well to see where people are coming from, but it's going to be really hard to observe that through these archways anyway. But as we go, we're going to see Seoul Dynasty again bend to the left. So they're doing their scouting. Michelle's just popping up there to look, and he's going to be like, oh, they're playing Winston Goats. You know, they're not, I don't see a Reinhardt up here on the high ground, so the Winston's probably going to come and tickle me in this doorway like they did last time, no worries. But that's not what happens, is it? That's not what happens at all. As we see Fusions running in here with the speed boost, and that means Jae Hong and Fisher are once again the first to die. Note, unfortunately for him, gets demeched, but he does actually manage to get into his mech again before the next fight starts in earnest, and it helps Boston just bleed a lot of time off this clock. Because look at what happened. Okay, Note lost the mech, not ideal, but you're starting with a pretty good ult advantage, especially on Blase and Fusions here. Well, I guess the Brigida ultimate charge is about the same, but you got those first kills, you lost some time, or you got some time, and you got, a small ult advantage. This is a pretty cool strategy. It's just one way to fool them. And then, of course, right after this, you can go back into a normal Reinhardt defense and just defend the choke point over here in this doorway. Again, Note would have been better to keep his mech. He would be happy about that, but doesn't end up happening. However, still like a really cool mind game from Boston. Just a little bit of a bonus here. We are going to look at a point B defense from Boston Uprising and a cool little micro trick from Note. As you can see, Fusions is already down, was killed by Fleta at the start of this engagement. Fleta's going to drop the grav on an ulting aim god and finish him after the Transcendence. So Boston now going to be down a couple players. Fusions is back up. But as we look at this, they're trying to walk forward with this sound barrier and go ahead and use Color Hex's Graviton Surge. And Note's just going to do a little bit of a cute little fake self-destruct here, which I thought was really fun inside the game. Does create a little bit more space, obviously, so Note going to be lifting up here. In spite of the fact that he used his self-destruct not too long ago, it's just a really cute little mind game. It can buy you time. It can prevent the enemy from pushing forward right here. Jexay had already used his sound barrier, so it wasn't actually a counter to the self-destruct like I thought during the cast after talking to Note. The 3-second D.Va fuse with the compared to the 0.8 second sound barrier cast time. If you don't hear that audio cue, you're not going to use it. But in any case, still, you can fake out many players in this scenario, force them to not walk up onto you, and maybe keep somebody alive that wouldn't be alive if the Seoul Dynasty played more aggressively. They do end up losing on this push, but that's just something really fun to look for, I think, in future professional matches. It's those little self-destruct fakes that might change out some scenarios. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this. It's been really fun to take a look at the Boston Uprising's unique strategies, and I'll see you next time for another point analysis.